JJK 265 was such a good chapter. Let's talk about it. Alright, so first of all, this was a yapter, but I say that as a term of endearment. I absolutely love this chapter, and I love that Gege took the entire chapter to let these things breathe. And anyone who's been complaining about this chapter, saying like, why aren't they fighting? Why is it talk no jutsu? I'm convinced those are the same people that call Gege a bad writer every week. Now, why did I love this chapter? Because Gege really dug in and is letting these things breathe. We are getting a full exploration of one of the primary themes of JJK, this clashing of ideals and worldviews between our protagonist and the antagonist, right? The dark mirror of one another. Who is right? Who will come out on top? We know that Sukuna hates Yuji, absolutely despises him for the very fact that Yuji represents everything he views as weak and wrong with the world. And yet, Yuji is able to match him in his strength of will on these ideas. And so we are finally getting this made fully manifest, like quite literally in the form of whatever this thing is, is it the domain? Is it, some sort of afterlife limbo sequence? It doesn't seem to be either of those things. It's something wholly different altogether that even Sukuna doesn't have a grasp on. And for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to talk too much about like what this thing actually is. We might dive into that at a later time, but for now I just want to explore what's happening here and just the cool little details that Gege showed us. So let's first talk about Yuji and his ideals. And these have not been set in stone. These have been literally shaped by the course of the story. As we know, Yuji didn't really have a role. He's been kind of this outlier for most of the story, right? He was an orphan that was then thrust into this unknown world of Jujutsu, doesn't have a curse technique, is just supposed to be this sacrifice for Sukuna, right? He's kind of formless in that regard until he first has the realization that, you know what? I know what my role is. I am just a cog in this jujutsu world. I am here to exercise curses. And how does Yuji come to this realization? Well, it's by interacting with his direct foil, another dark mirror at the time, Mahito, right? I'm you, because Yuji realizes he is the opposite of everything Mahito stands for. Mahito thinks that everyone is just the same. They all have no meaning and no value. That's why I can do whatever I want and live how I want. I'm going to indiscriminately kill people because it doesn't matter. Yuji obviously adamantly disagrees with that, and so he finds his role, his place on the other side of that dichotomy, saying that yes, I now know what I am. I am a cog in this machine to stand up against you, and I will fulfill my role in that regard. But Yuji's journey wasn't done here because he still had a lot to learn, and learn he did, ultimately coming to realize that it doesn't matter what your role is. You don't need a role in order to have a proper fulfilled death, because human value doesn't come from what you do. Whether it's you decide to become a sorcerer, or whether you decide to raise a family, or just lie in bed all day not making any connections, it doesn't matter. There is still intrinsic value and meaning in those people's lives, especially in the fragments of them that will carry on long after they're gone. And Gege shows this by actually showing all of the people that Yuji have lost. And it's not important about what their role was or how they died. Their importance was the fact that they were mentors, family, or friends. And what's absolutely beautiful about this chapter is that not only do we have this 15, 16-year-old kid who has had these profound realizations about life and the intrinsic value and meaning in it, but he is also walking the walk. He is also extending this olive branch to Sukuna, trying to build a bridge between them to show him what it is like to have compassion for others, to maybe see through the lens of someone else for the first time, to understand that intrinsic value in a human life. Even though Yuji hates Sukuna, even says he loathes him in this chapter, above all else, he is still trying to extend that compassion and that empathy to him one last time. And it's obviously no coincidence that in this scene, Gege shows us this statue of a bodhisattva of compassion and mercy. And then there's Sukuna, right? The polar opposite of literally everything we've been talking about. And in fact, he views those things as weakness. He threw it all away by his own admission in pursuit of his own desires and his own strength. Throughout the heaven and earth, he alone is the honored one because only his pleasure and displeasure exist. He is the epitome of selfishness. And how does he react to Yuji trying to give him a window into this perspective? He doesn't care at all. It doesn't move the needle for him even a little bit. And he even goes so far as to let us know that, hey, I understand exactly what you're trying to say. It's not that I don't get it, I do, and it still means nothing to me. And this leads to one of the hardest panels in the entire manga where Yuji's eyes go cold and focused. He has given Sukuna this one last chance and he threw it away like everything else. So now he says, you have one option. You give back Megami right now and join me in my body, or else I'm going to kill you. And Sukuna's reaction to this is visceral and purely emotional because it's only now that he's realized that everything Yuji has been doing in this sequence has been an act of mercy and compassion and empathy. And Sukuna will absolutely not be looked down upon in that way by Yuji. And so he loses it. He goes feral. He is baring his teeth like a wild predator. He can absolutely not handle this disrespect in his eyes from someone he loathes so much like Yuji. And I cannot tell you how much I absolutely love this juxtaposition here. This may go down as my favorite moment in the entire manga because, again, this is all representative of this clashing of ideals, right? And look at our two participants here. Yuji, again, cold, focused, holding steadfast and firm in what he believes in, whereas Sukuna is completely reacting on emotion. He can't even contain what his face is doing right now. It is so visceral for him. So amongst these two, who would you think really holds firmer on what they believe in? And what I think is fascinating is this juxtaposition is kind of mirrored in this crayfish competition moment where, Sukuna makes fun of Yuji's for being much smaller and meeker, whereas his is larger and boisterous and almost kind of flaunting its strength in this position, similar to how Yuji, calm, cool, collected, Sukuna losing it in this moment. But in reality, Yuji's crayfish, just like Yuji himself, is the much rarer and more special catch here. And another thing I think is beautiful here is through what Yuji is showing us, these different stops on this drift down memory lane, if you will, it's kind of showing us the journey of his childhood kind of innocence and naivete and worldview dissolving away. A couple examples of how it used to be all this lush green farmland, but now we've kind of had industrialization. These things are replaced by department stores, and the grasshoppers are no longer here because of the pesticides. And when I was a kid, I thought Santa existed because I heard his bells at night, but when I got older, I realized that was just the snow chains on the car tires. We are seeing Yuji evolve and kind of grow through these different experiences that he's had, and it's all beautiful, right? It's part of life. We live, learn, and grow, and yet I think this is interesting when viewed under the light of Sukuna's life. Now, granted, we don't know too much about his past or how he grew up, but I think it's pretty safe to say that he's probably always had these ideals. He described himself as an outcast, a cursed little wretch as a child, so I feel like he very quickly probably had to adapt this worldview of it's only me out here. I need to pursue things that, only benefit me. Only my pleasure and displeasure exist, right? But Sukuna, unlike Yuji, never had this growth as he grew up. He is locked in his singular mindset and refuses to adapt, which would again explain why he got so emotional when this was challenged, and especially to be challenged by somebody like Yuji. This is his fundamental core at his being, and this cannot be shaken, or else everything he's done and lived for is wrong, right? The one to teach him about love is. And like we've seen, just because Yuji is trying to show Sukuna compassion and empathy and to teach him about love doesn't mean that Sukuna will actually accept it or change in any way. And so I love that at least thus far, Gege has shown us exactly that. Sukuna is not budging at all. Now, might he budge somewhat in some way before the end of the manga? Could Yuji get through to him on some level? Maybe. I don't expect a full 180 again, but I wonder if he can pierce through that before it's all said and done. And I also didn't realize I've been waxing poetic on this for nearly 10 minutes. I had some other things I wanted to talk about, but I think I want to keep the focus of this video on this clash of ideals and get y'all's thoughts on it in the comments. So I'm going to end here for now, but be on the lookout for more about this chapter because your boy's got a lot to say. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching.